What's going on, guys? This is Bruce Matson, your host of the show, Mexican Scout Fantasy Football, the show that talks about all things fantasy football, from redraft and dynasty, from best ball to campus to Canton. You name it, we do it. If that's something you're interested in, click that subscribe button, ring the bell, tell your homies. As we know, I've been covering the draft 2 rounds at a time, and now we're down to rounds 6 and 7, covering the running backs and wide receivers. This point of the draft, most of these guys are not going to do anything for us. They're late round projects. Some of them have upside, some of them don't. Some of them will just be journeymen who bounce around the league for a few months and they're out. But we have to cover them. We have to know who they are just in case they make a move and start to be productive. So I'm going to go through these guys kind of quick, give you a couple words, couple sentences on what I think, and then we'll just move on with them. I'll start off with the running backs here in round 6. The first running back off the board in round 6 was Elijah Mitchell. He got drafted to the 49ers. This is at pick 194. What I think about him is he's a good speed back. He runs well. If anything, going into the draft, he was considered one of the top running backs. He fell in the draft here. First back off the board in round 6. The upside doesn't seem to be there. The running back corps in San Francisco seems very convoluted. Seems like there's a lot of guys there feasting for touches. He does have talent. If he can stick on the roster for a long period of time, he could work his way up to meaningful touches. He could become a promising starter because the talent's there. With a 4th round rookie pick, he's worth taking a stab at. The next running back off the board was Gary Brightwell, 196 to the New York Giants. The Giants have Saquon Barkley, Devontae Booker. They're stacked at the running back position. They do not even need another running back. He's going to be a depth guy, can't body. I got to avoid at all costs here in Dynasty. He's not draftable. You can pick him up off waivers if you ever need him. Let's just ignore him at this point. The next running back off the board was Larry Roundtree, running back from Missouri. He was selected by the Chargers at pick 198. Very productive during his tenure at Missouri. Has some things that could allow him to excel. Austin Eckler's there. We also have a lot of ancillary jabronis. He could work his way up to being the number 2 back there. The job's open for the taking. He has the ability to fight for that spot. He's not going to take Austin Eckler's spot unless something happens to him. But Larry Roundtree could work his way into meaningful touches somewhere down the line. May not have RB1 upside, may not have even RB2 upside, but he could be used in a pinch if something happens to Eckler. If the other running backs fall on their face in camp and he works his way up the depth chart, I could see that happening. There's a chance on that. There's also a chance that he's out of the league in a year and a half. So it is what it is with these round 6 prospects. Another player that I like went right after him at 202, Chris Evans. And he wasn't used well at Michigan. The stats aren't going to show that he's a promising prospect when you look at the counting stats, the production metrics. But he is a good athlete. He has good size. He moves well. The team has Joe Mixon. The team has Samaje Perine. The team has Trevion Williams on the depth chart. They're not really looking for another running back. Evans, at best, he can be solid depth for the team and could possibly become a usable asset if something happens to Mixon, which we've seen him injured a few times in his career already. So that's not outside the line of thinking. Samaje Perine held his own, at best, when Mixon was out. So Chris Evans could work his way up the depth chart. It could happen to where he could be the RB2 or RB3 on the team. After him, at 217, so 15 picks later, the Bears drafted Khalil Herbert from Virginia Tech. They have David Montgomery there. They have Tariq Cohen and a slew of other prospects. Herbert's just going to be fighting for a spot on the roster, and if he makes it there, then he could be a solid depth guy. For Dynasty Fantasy Football purposes, I mean, he could be alright as a late round guy, but you're more likely going to be picking him off the waiver wire. He's alright to stash on your taxi for a year, just see what happens, because this Bears team is just ambiguous. You're not going to know what this roster is going to be looking like in the next year to year and a half, so it's all right to stack up on some of these prospects just in case they have a coaching change or regime change and some of these late round guys get a chance. A slew of picks later, at 233, the Rams selected Jake Funk, running back from Maryland. Tested better than what he looks, but not a great size-adjusted athlete. He's a guy that you just stay away from at all costs. Cam Akers is there. He's going to be carrying the rock. It's the Cam Akers show in LA, and no other running back is going to work themselves up the depth chart and take that job. It's not going to happen. Just scratch Jake Funk off your list. The next running back that got selected, this is at 244, is Jared Dokes, running back from Cincinnati. And he went to the Dolphins. The Dolphins has Myles Gaskin as their starting running back, who went unscathed throughout the draft process. The thing about Dokes is he's a good size adjusted athlete. He's a good size. He can run between the tackles. He's not a stud prospect. I mean, if he was, he wouldn't be getting drafted here at round 7. However, there's opportunity here in Miami. They're not afraid of working around their roster to see what they have. I wouldn't be surprised if Dokes becomes the player that comes out of nowhere from this draft to become the next fantasy relevant option from this 2021 draft. Jared Dokes could be the diamond in the rough here that no one's really looking at. And there's a lot of good things pointing his way, except for he's a 7th round pick, and the odds are stacked against him. The next player that went off the board was Kylan Hill, went to the Packers, round 7, 256. Again, Aaron Jones is there, and A.J. Dillon is also. It's going to be steep sledding for him, so a slew of injuries would need to occur for him to get an opportunity for touches. He would also need to fight his way up the depth chart. He looked good at Mississippi State during the early portion of his career. Things went bad in the last half of his career, last year, so it is what it is. Last but not least, the last running back selected in round 7 at 257 was Jamar Jefferson. He went to the Detroit Lions. DeAndre Swift's the man there. They also have Williams. This is a weird spot for any player. New coaching staff. It looks like they're building their team to run heavy. However, that doesn't mean that this is going to be a great spot for Jamar Jefferson. Jamar Jefferson could come in and earn RB2 touches behind DeAndre Swift in 2022. That is always a possibility. But with him being the last running back selected, the odds are really against his favor. He didn't test well at his pro day. He was very productive early on in his career at Oregon State. The tape looked good. He looked faster than what he tested at. It's just he's going to have to really prove himself early in camp this year for him to have a shot. Let's go on to the wide receivers and look what we have here in the later rounds. And here was a very interesting day 3. So the first wide receiver selected was Frank Darby in round 6, and he went to the Atlanta Falcons. I'm not really interested in Frank Darby at all. That doesn't have the production to warrant me wanting to go head over heels for him. I like the situation. I will pick him up off waivers if the option's there, but I'm not going to be drafting him. I'm not going to be spending any capital on him. Not at all. The next wide receiver off the board was Marquez Stevenson to the Buffalo Bills at pick 203, still in the 6th round. Stephon Diggs is going to own a large portion of targets, and he's going to be doing that for quite a while. I don't see him really working his way up the depth chart. There is a chance for him to become a role player, but I think that's going to be his upside here in Buffalo. The next wide receiver that got selected was Shee Smith, who went to the Carolina Panthers at 204. All of a sudden, this wide receiver room has got a lot of mouths to feed. However, if he can work his way up the depth chart and become a starter, or at least a starter for like a stretch of 3 to 6 games, that's a solid landing spot, and he could be productive. there and just be fed. This is a fast-paced offense that wants to move the ball downfield. They upgraded at quarterback. They have a lot of weapons, and he would be used in the slot there because he is profiled as a slot receiver. The next running back off the board was Racey McCaff, and he went to the Tennessee Titans. I'm out on him. I'm really not looking to draft him. Too low volume of a passing offense. A.J. Brown's going to be owning too much of the passing work, and the draft pick's too low for me to want to invest in him. Same thing with the next wide receiver who went off the board was Jalen Camp, wide receiver from Georgia Tech. And Jacksonville has, they're building that wide receiver core up, and I just don't see him being able to carve up a role to be fantasy relevant early in his career. He could be a breakout guy later on, but I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it at all. And then same with the next one, Demetric Felton from California, Los Angeles. He went to the Browns. Again, they're stacked at wide receiver with Landry, OBJ, drafted Schwartz in the draft. And I get it. Injuries have plagued this team at wide receiver these last couple years. But for camp reps and everything else, it's going to be hard for him to work his way up the depth chart. The next wide receiver selected went to the Denver Broncos at 219. Still in the 6th round was Seth Williams. And he was one of my favorite wide receivers going into the draft. Well, I had him ranked around 11-ish in my wide receiver rankings. I like him at this spot. I think he could be a late breakout candidate from the bottom half of this draft. But I don't like that he has to compete with Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, and Noah Fant for targets. That is going to hinder his upside. Courtland Sutton had a massive injury last year. If he experiences any setbacks, Seth Williams could step in there and take over that role, or at least be an understudy to him. That holds some value. If anything, out of all these round 6 guys, I value Seth Williams the most. After him was Daz Newsome going to the Chicago Bears. I don't know what this Bears team is going to be looking like here for the long term. I do like Justin Fields there, but I know Allen Robinson is going to command most of the targets. Darnell Mooney's looking really good. And also, Anthony Miller is a steal there. So Daz Newsome's going to have some competition. I think at best he'll be a role player for Chicago, and that's at best. Now we're going in the round 7. And the first player drafted in round 7 was Mike Strachan, wide receiver from Charleston, small school guy, went to the Colts. The Colts is a funny depth chart because it's wide open for the taking. We got Michael Pittman there and company, and it's not like they have their true alpha yet. Strachan isn't a guy that strikes you as a guy that can blow up, but of course he's a 7th round guy. But he could compete, work his way up the roster, and could surprise folks. Is it likely that he'll be a top guy for them or be a starter? Probably not. But does he have a chance? Yes, he has a small window of hope. That's what he's got here. Next wide receiver taken was Trey Nixon to the New England Patriots. Their wide receiver core is not that great. So for a 7th round pick going to the Patriots, the competition there is palatable for them. It's palatable that they could take over, earn some reps in live games, see a few targets here and there. From there, they just got to take advantage of their opportunity. So Trey Nixon, yes. Is he draftable in rookie drafts? No, not really. You just pick him up off waivers and hope if something happens. That's if you got enough room on your taxi squad. Same with all these 7th round guys. The next wide receiver drafted was Ben Schroeneck. Went to the Rams. Again, I don't see him moving up that depth chart. I think it's going to be a tough road to hoe for him. At best, he could be a role player for the team. Next player drafted at 255 was Kawan Baker, wide receiver from South Alabama, small school guy. He's going to be competing with Michael Thomas, Traquan Smith, and the rest of the wide receivers on that roster. Injuries have plagued that team at the wide receiver position. So if the injury bug starts biting these wide receivers, that could allow him to sneak up the depth chart, maybe get some snaps, some reps in live games. That's what we're hoping for most with these guys. And if we get a little bit more, that's some icing on the cake. The odds of him outshining any of the top wide receivers on the depth chart is highly unlikely here. And then the last wide receiver selected was Dax Milne, wide receiver from BYU, selected at 258. The Washington football team already drafted Dami Brown in the 3rd round. They have Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel. He is going to have to fight his way up the depth chart and hope he can get in a position where he can get snaps. And if injuries occur, then he could get a chance to play. But odds are we're not getting a fancy relevant asset out of Dax Milne. I look for Dami Brown actually to exceed expectations in Washington. I liked him in the draft process. I think this is a good fit for him. The Washington football team likes speed, and I'm all in on Dami Brown. Hopefully he's fallen to the 3rd round rookie drafts, because that's where I'm going to be swooping in and drafting him up. Well, I want to thank you for watching the show. We just covered all the rounds in 4 different episodes, I think. Go back in the archives so you can see what I think about your favorite player or whatever. I'll be coming out with some rankings here soon. So for now, make sure you hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, tell your homies, and I'll catch you next.